Gwinnett Medical Center is now entering Peachtree Corners. Conveniently located in the heart of this thriving community, our new center offers first-rate primary care and specialty services, including cardiology, gastroenterology, neurology, OBGYN, orthopedics, 3D mammography, and X-ray. Learn more about how GMC is making industry-leading healthcare more convenient than ever at gwinnettmedicalcenter.org/PTC.
So doing the real stuff, and then so now when you finally graduate, you get a job at Google, and you're working on this program you're describing, you're like, I've been using this Google Cloud since I was in middle school, and you already have domain context to dig deeper. That, to me, that's the holy grail that I'm chasing, and I think the intersection of education with industry and the proper community partners is what that trilogy is something that I think is exciting and can be expanded without a lot of strain on either part of the ecosystem.
You're with The Capitalist Sage, a twice-a-month podcast that seeks out entrepreneurs and experts that speak to the real-world life of doing business for their sage advice. Now, with your hosts, Karl Barham and Rico Figliolini.
Welcome to The Capitalist Sage podcast. We're here to bring you advice and tips from seasoned pros and experts to help you improve your business. I'm Karl Barham with Transworld Business Advisor, and my co-host is Rico Figliolini with Mighty Rockets Digital Marketing and the publisher of the Peachtree Corner magazine, which is due out soon. Hey, Rico, how you doing?
Hey, Karl. Really well, thanks.
Oh, fabulous. Well, let's start off by introducing some of our sponsors for today's show.
Well, we got to say thank you to Atlanta Tech Park for letting us use their great podcast space. They're located here in Peachtree Corners. They're a tech accelerator here in Peachtree Corners, a tech hub offering workspace, event space. In fact, yesterday and the last 2 days they had FinTech here. Really big financial technology. That former KGB agent here talking on one of the panels. Quite a few things going on here. So an excellent place, a place to small companies can grow. We love being here. Our other primary, if you will, sponsor is GMC Primary Care and Specialty Center. They just opened here in Peachtree Corners. And they're part of the, originally part of the Gwinnett Medical Center that's been bought out by Northside Hospital now. So they're part of the greater Northside Hospital setup. So we wanted to welcome them. They're primary care, and they have specialty centers. So right in the mix, they have their own x-rays and mammography and other technology that they can refer within the center.
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. So as the community continues to grow, we've got a town center, we've got medical, we've got Atlanta Tech Park, we've got incubators as the town keeps to go. But following along the theme of how Peachtree Corners is growing and technology in general, today's guest is Laron Walker. He is the CEO of Mantis EDU, here to talk about taking IoT, the Internet of Things, and related technology and applying it from the space of education all the way through commercial applications. How are you doing today, Laron?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, fabulous. Well, why don't we start off by telling a little bit about yourself and your background and what led you to play in this field?
So I'm a native Atlantan. I grew up in Southwest Atlanta within a 10-mile radius of the downtown area. And, as a kid, I was always kind of the tinkerer. I had businesses where I was cutting grass and working with things, and I remember a story once where I had an old cable box, and something told me that this is before we had smart homes, but I had a remote control in the cable box, but the family had no cable. And so what I did was I found a bunch of lamps, I found an old fan, and I plugged it to the back of the cable box because I knew that when you turned it on, the power came on. And thinking back around that, I had one of the first smart homes, right? I got out of my bed, I pressed a button, and the box came on, my lights came on, in the morning I turned it off, right? So I was always tinkering and doing things. I attended Atlanta public schools, and one of the first earliest memories I have around engineering was that when you were in middle school, on the way to high school, magnet schools, you had to choose a career path. And so my brother attended Frederick Douglass High School, who happened to be an engineering magnet school, really good school. And back then the choice was you want to choose electrical or mechanical. And I chose electrical because I knew how to play with wires. I had no clue that electrical engineering was a totally different source. I got there, engineering magnet school. Then one day somebody came by and said, if you have 1,000 on the SAT and a 3.0, we'll give you a scholarship. And that's how I ended at Tennessee State. And so all those kind of happenstance type scenarios moving down this path. But in doing so, I got exposed to a lot of interesting people. And so bringing it home at Tennessee State, very entrepreneurial dean. And this is in the late 90s. Our Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering got a grant where the idea was that they had to teach students how to learn how to build HTML.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally got paid to learn HTML, and out of that project, we built the first website for the electrical engineering department in our school.
Wow.
And from that, the rest is history. I learned about code. I realized that building and having tech skills was a way kind of forward. Mm-hmm. And since that time, I've been really focused on how do I take technology and tools to build businesses around that that enable others to have a very similar pathway.
That's what happens. I know back in that time in the 90s, aerospace was starting, the Cold War ended, and people started shifting out of aerospace and mechanical engineering. And electrical, the internet wasn't really a big thing there, but people were going to electrical engineering and it was more traditional.
Sure.
But quickly, all of a sudden, the internet, electrical engineering, sensors, these technologies started exploding. So if you were in that industry at the right time, you were at the beginning of it, when they were just coming out. The first website, like Netscape, Mosaic, was back in like 89. Like those browsers, and look where it's come to.
It's funny, man. Like when I went to a summer pre-college program. This is '96. A lot of you not. The first we went in. The physics teacher was a pretty forward-thinking guy, and the assignment that we had was to go to the internet and print out the 5-day forecast for our city. Just to force us to go and think about the internet and how it can be used and what you can deal with that. Wow. So just thinking about, like, even in the late 90s, some people had not been exposed to those technologies. And
you couldn't just Google it either.
You couldn't Google it. But the ironic part is this, though, and that brings it forward to today's conversation. Those divides are growing like crazy today. And this tech has not been exposed to our kids. They're in school learning things that are not applicable to today's jobs. And people don't understand that's the case, and I think that's a really big issue.
Give me an example of some of the technologies that you're seeing now that you would say young people should really get comfortable with mastering early on.
So right now we all know there's a huge talk about autonomous vehicles, machine learning, AI. And those sound like really interesting buzzwords that are very complicated. Truth be told, even in the industry now, most of that technology is being outsourced to providers like Microsoft, Google, et cetera, and they are ending within web services, right? So not many companies have a true cognitive ability within that. But knowing that the trend is to outsource those functions, you have to understand how to ingest and use that. So there's no reason why a kid in elementary, middle, or high school now can't learn how to ingest or call a web service to get data, right? Because if you have that simple construct, you're now able to work with these people that you can outsource data to. So the point of black boxes existing, I have an input, there's an output, data goes from here to there. That's a very generic concept that can be easily digested. And then once you understand that, as you go from elementary to middle to high school, over time you may develop your own algorithm, right? And those are the type of things that are happening now. We aren't telling people, like, this is what the cloud really is. That's how that works. Right, so kids now, when they're aspiring to start a business or to build a product, they're out trying to build things that in real life I would just go pay 1 cent for. But nobody's ever shown them practical ways to do those things so they can start solving the issues.
Got it. When you think about kids in school now, the type of stuff, how can they learn and start to grapple something? What you found?
That's what we're doing. So the cool thing about it is that on our side, our focus is this. So there are two issues. Most of the companies that are building tools and tech and hardware and things like that, they're primarily focused on consumer type markets. So as like recently, for instance, Sciberus, a really interesting company, robot that everybody got exposed to, made a lot of money selling Star Wars themed robots. And when the movie dies down, the buzz dies down, you can't really sell those products, and then they're pivoting to education. But there's a different thing when you're selling to schools, right? Teachers want to know about curriculum standards and have professional development and standards alignment, right? And the people who make devices aren't coming from that vantage point. So on our side, what you do is that we say, well, great. First of all, the purpose of these tools that we're describing is to teach math and science and physics. So then how do you take those scenarios and wrap real-world examples around it? So for as an example, we did a couple of camps this summer over at Clark Atlanta here in Metro Atlanta area where the kids will learn about intro to coding, computing principles, sensors, and then the use case culminated with an aquaponics system that was actually, aquaponics is using water and contained environments to grow plants and vegetables, right? So that's a real world issue. Food deserts exist. So I can teach you about a climate sensor that can measure environmentals. I can teach you about a plant sensor that can measure plant health. I can teach you about how to measure pH and things along those lines. So you have these core concepts. While you're learning how to use those sensors, I can teach you about things like plots and graphs and cloud, which ties to standards. But to get you excited about it, I'm not going to leave it there. Let's go and put some goldfish in a bin that are peeing, making ammonia. That ammonia creates the nitrates. The nitrates create nitrites. The nitrites are being taken in by the plants, and the plants are not going to produce a vegetable. And this is happening in real time. And it's being done in a way to where a middle school kid can program in a tool called Scratch, which is a prevailing tool in the market, to make that happen.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was just listening to something about Google X, right? The X company.
Sure.
How they are experimenting with right down to the plant. They're talking about farming, almost exactly what you're talking about. The sensors,
and that's
down to the plant level, though, not just the field level, and knowing every single plant, like plant number 2038.
To that point, though, so listen to what you just said, though. So right now, there are stats out there saying that most of the jobs that are going to be existing in 2030 are going to be for about a day's pipeline. And there are stats out talking about how our kids aren't excited and motivated. The challenge is this. Most people that we're describing that actually are building tools and things that are being put into our schools and programs aren't aligned to what companies care about. Now imagine when the person at Google who leads that, the program manager for that program you just described, imagine what happens when he or she goes to a school district and you can say, hey, this entire school, these kids know these concepts. Here's a miniature version of what you're doing in real life. You don't think they would get behind and support that?
They probably would.
They would, right? Because for the first time ever, you're not taking a company and saying support this program and giving them a bumper sticker saying I support kids. You're actually authentically connecting what they're doing to what's happening. And that's the piece that I think is missing.
And feeding their pipeline for talent, because they can't find enough people that have the skills to invent the future that they're imagining.
That's it.
And well, and I think that's why STEM schools are popping up everywhere, because the idea is now they're shifting to the idea that you don't need a 4-year college degree.
No.
You could come out of high school knowing programming, knowing
having
these
skills
things,
that you can apply. The disdain of not having a 4-year degree is disappearing.
Is moving away.
Right? And even people with 4-year degrees, I always joke about it, man. So in my history, I stopped at Tennessee State, but I left Tennessee State and went to Purdue. And because I was told that get the highest degree you can get, right? So back then I went to usatoday.com and I looked, and University of Michigan, Purdue, and Georgia Tech were the top engineering schools, right? And somebody told me I could have went to Ann Arbor, or I could have went to West Lafayette, and Michigan was past Purdue. So I stopped in Indiana, right? But I joined the direct PhD program because that was the best degree. And I spent 5 years in a PhD program, not realizing I should have got an MBA. But at the end of the day, when you think back on it, I got a lot of theoretical skills in the classroom. My lab work is what got me the hands-on skills. But truth be told, knowing what I know now, I would have been much better suited going to the Rock for a couple of years just to get some actual hands-on skills and then supplementing that with some business. Because people don't get the hands-on. And I keep saying with our kids, if we can expose to them the how, right, that'll help them get intrigued and figure out the why. And to me, that's why I focus on things that are tangible, real world, to get you excited. But then more importantly, we are, unlike some of the other industrial or commercial companies, we are building programs that can sit within the construct of a school. Because ultimately, this has to be something that can be taught and that can be expanded as a program across the board.
So tell me a little bit about some of the projects that you've developed and kids have worked through and how it's helping them learn skills.
So a couple of examples. So our sphere of influence today is really focusing on things that can happen within the confines of an after-school program, a STEM camp, a summer camp type experience, because I think that's really interesting. If you look at the space today, anybody with young kids, let's say elementary, middle school kids who are doing after-school or summer experiences, truthfully, most of those programs, even if they're STEM-based programs, are glorified babysitting operations. And so I think that's an issue. And so we start there. So, and then we also play within the space of some corporate partners who are engaging kids. So a good example would be Microsoft has their BAM program, which is like their the Black Microsoft Employee Resource Group. So every year they bring in a bunch of kids from high schools, expose them to tech. We have a session at Microsoft. We bring out our environmental sensors. And this use case said, hey guys, let's do a use case around cold chain logistics, something being shipped through the supply chain. We gave them an environmental sensor. We gave them a package, and they had to write some code to be able to determine, like pull off the sensor data, things like temperature, humidity, and pressure. And the idea was that if that was an outlier, and we gave them like a hairdryer, a blower to raise the heat. And the thing was like, hey, let's write a program so if this thing gets outside of a threshold, It has to alert you. So that we give them an SDK to send text messages. So every group had to sit back, think about it, write some code, experiment with that. Right. Before that, they got a whole talk around cloud and how it worked. And like, hey guys, like, how do you send SMSs? Well, that's an SDK. That's a company called Twilio. They just went public. They make a lot of money, man, just selling cloud services. At the end of the event, every group comes up. They talk about cloud, how it works, IoT, control systems. They write.
How old are these kids?
In this case, these kids were, it ranged like high school and up in that scenario. But we've done the same thing below. Here in Gwinnett, we had a scenario with the elementary school. Interestingly enough, that was a teacher at the school that had a kid that went through the program 15 years early. He's a really smart guy, but he would come by every day now during the week and teach a Scratch course. The school had invested in a hydroponic aquaponics lab that was fully instrumented with plants growing, and we did a session with the kids to show them how to use the sensors, right? So then what happened was, once they understood how to connect with the sensors in Scratch, the school went and bought an LCD screen, hooked in a Raspberry Pi, and the kids wrote code on the Pi that would read data from the sensors and make a real-time dashboard.
Nice.
So now when the superintendent came by or visitors come by, you have elementary school kids talking about how they're collecting data and how it's being leveraged. And the point there is that I know adults who've never seen a real-time dashboard or can explain how data is ingested on a dashboard. And so to me, it's like you take these tools, no matter whether it's elementary, middle, or high school, the kids all use the same sensors or the same ecosystem. But what you do is you graduate the tool sets over time as they get more exposure to expose them to different parts of the equation. And I think that's the thing. So me trying to graduate a progression that goes from upper elementary, actually I keep saying high school, but it's really more K-20. Because to me this ends in the collegiate course or that technical school. And you're basically saying, hey man, when you were in elementary school, we didn't really tell you that much that sensors have dirty data, you got to run an average on. We just kind of did it for you. And you get to high school, it's like, hey man, it's dirty, you got to go run an average, right?
You know, that's funny. That's almost like history. They teach you basic history, but they never teach you about the stuff, the really down and dirty stuff until you get towards high school and college. You know, just the basics.
So doing the real stuff, and then so now when you finally graduate, you get a job at Google, and you're working on this program you're describing, you're like, I've been using this Google Cloud since I was in middle school, and you already have domain context to dig deeper. That to me, that's the holy grail that I'm chasing, and I think the intersection of education with industry and the proper community partners is what that trilogy is something that I think is exciting and can be expanded without a lot of strain on either part of the ecosystem.
So it's an interesting model that you have. You develop a business based in technology that's having impact on the community.
Sure.
And so when you chose to go that pathway, what made you choose that? And are there things you would do differently, knowing what you know now when you started along this path?
Yeah. So going on that path is really because I come from very humble beginnings. Like technology changed my life. Like literally, like because I was able to get a skill, like at Tennessee State, where I was learning how to write code. I had a laptop, and because I had a laptop, I started building websites, and I was able to monetize that, right? So without question, to me, that's the great equalizer. If you look at the trends now, the wealthiest people in the world, most of those guys made their money in tech, right? So tech is a great generator of wealth and legacy on the business side. But to me, I also realized that the work that I do, like my nonprofit, we give out scholarships. Like that's not sustainable. That's an outbound process. So my opinion is that by having these tech-enabled businesses, our model was this. I surveyed schools that are using tech as a part of their process. And most companies that sell tech, particularly hardware, it's not very profitable because most people don't make it themselves. So they take something they bought from somebody else, they market it like crazy, and they sell it at the high end of the market. So what that means is that the people that really need it don't get access to it. So our approach here is that can we build a business where we can actually design hardware that's best in breed, but affordable by design. That way we can find ways to get it out there at scale. But then by doing that, if I can expose that to these ecosystems of underserved people, or even people who actually have connectivity to it, I can influence, get them those skill sets to help them change their lives, which means that they're going to pull back and pull people forward. So that's kind of the theory behind it. And the third piece of that is, the thing I would do differently, and which I've been working on recently, is that a lot of people don't understand the importance of education technology or the ability to do good and do well at the same time. So it's very difficult to raise capital, raise investment, right? Hardware in general is an industry people don't really invest much in. Most VC funds focus on software. And then you go and have this education kind of community slant. People think you're a nonprofit.
Right.
And so we've been trying to form this to show people that, hey, man, this is a real business that we can scale. So to that point, the tech we're using in these classrooms, as we described earlier, is real world tech. So we now have started to work on institutional partners where we can actually launch consumer products that take that same tech in a different vein to show people that, hey, not only is it used in schools, but it's in this big retailer. Or there are a lot of ways to make that happen.
You know, the best part is that I think because of the way the market here is in the United States and probably in a good portion of the world, is that what you're doing is you're saying, don't just do this because it's just for the kids. You're saying we're gonna show you commercial application that can actually make money.
There you go.
In the marketplace. Because if you can't make money, I mean, in the long run, you lose anyway because it's just going to fall by the wayside. Because no one's going to invest in something where it's just altruistic and stuff. That's such a short-term thing. But if you can prove to them that there's money to be made here, this is a commercial application, then people will definitely get involved in that.
Yeah, so definitely before it was more the mindset of we're doing this work, it has great value, running these programs, and it was really purely about the kids. And that's still the case to this day. But I have to change my hat and just make sure I'm making people realize that this is a way to drive revenue that can scale. This is a growth market, not only domestically but internationally. And the way in which we're thinking about this is completely different than everybody else. And if you're in this space, you know, Microsoft, Google, not only are we supporting and helping you build pipeline, we are building solutions and products that marry very well with things that you sell in the schools. And so my solution paired with your Chromebook, my solution paired with your Surface tablet is a way to drive consumption, to drive cloud computing, to get consumers' hands in front of your products in a natural way that fits into your strategic plan. And so that's the way that we're framing the conversation now.
So one of the things you notice is, you know, IoT and these technologies are changing. I'm going to ask you to put on your hat and look into the future a little bit. What are some of the areas where you think the IoT smart technologies can have the most transformative impact on businesses specifically and in communities?
So on the business side, what's interesting about it, man, is that people talk about IoT. The big market for IoT is the IIoT, the industrial Internet of Things, right? There are a lot of factories out there and disparate systems that have been around for years, and they can't just go out and buy the new Apple Watch whenever the new version comes out. And that's the interesting thing, man. As people are looking at innovation, they go and hire kids that just graduated from school. And those kids are trying to make Apple Watches. It's sexy, right? And it's not for lack, it's lack of understanding. They never worked in these dirty jobs. It's like, think about the show Mike Rowe used to have, Dirty Jobs. Think about all those dirty places he went into. They need sensors too. And so those little things that can't be connected, or if you go and connect this thing, you can't go change out the ERP and it can't use 5G, but it still has a signal on it. Those brownfield applications, that's an interesting spot, man. There are millions and millions of those out there, and like nobody's thinking about it. They still got to get connected. And so things like that are very, very interesting on the industrial side. On the consumer side, again, these titans out there are controlling the ecosystem. So the Apples of the world are very forceful in terms of what you can do and how you can do it. So I think as we find ways to get more connectivity, you know, as you are able to, as cities are deploying Wi-Fi and things, so like the barrier to connectivity disappears, you're going to see a lot of other applications happen. So I think in the home, look at what Amazon is doing now. Amazon acquired Ring. Amazon acquired Eero, right? That tells you that the home is a place where a lot of stuff is happening. So I think you're going to see a lot of more stuff happening within the constructs of a home. And I think what's going to happen in the future is that this notion of having to rely on an outside third party to give you all these things is going to be just like in the enterprise. There was this BYOD type approach. I think you're going to start seeing that, and I think frameworks are going to start to exist to allow you to more plug and play stuff to create your own experience around it.
Do you see the? I mean, I see it, but and I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong. Do you see the closed environment they want to create? I mean, AWS, the cloud, AI.
I think it's a problem though. I'll give you a good example. Actually, I'm leaving today. So I'm a pretty technical person. I can write software, and I have a hardware company. But even right now, I can't go home and take one of my systems my company produces and put it on my network at home without going crazy. So all the major players, they have taken a traditional approach. They've invested in some technology that they chose in their technology plan 7, 8 years ago or 10 years ago. They've already amortized the cost of it, and they're forcing everything they do to go down that path. And they're keeping people from getting involved with that. And what that does, so now you go into the home and there's already connectivity there. You have a security company there. You have all these connected people. Then Amazon comes with an Alexa and jumps on your hotspot and takes over the whole house. Because the other pieces were closed and not forward thinking.
That's right.
So you have to open that piece up because there's no one size fits all.
But do you see Amazon wanting to open that piece up?
I think those guys are opening up connectivity to try to force you toward their cloud.
Okay.
Right?
That's
And
what
so
I was
you
saying.
have to be careful in terms of if that's part of your business or not. But the fact that there is an Alexa there that has a bunch of users that I can plug into has an interesting value proposition. Just no matter what happens with the data that you got to be careful about.
Do you think education can work well there too? I know AWS allows, because of the AI,
Yep.
they're saying that you could use their AI to develop your own.
But that is the play, though.
But
So that is the opportunity, and that's my point earlier. So now let's go back to the scenario of now we're growing food.
Yeah.
This food has a myriad of sensors. So imagine now when I want to go in and deploy this to a impoverished neighborhood who doesn't have the skill set, and I can now go and have them collecting data going back to a cloud. And now we're in Georgia. So what do we have? We have UGA. They focus on some ag stuff. There's probably a PhD there who wants some data. You don't think we can build a system using AWS or Azure where we can feed this person all this data? They can tune their algorithms, they can tweak it, and once they tweak it, they can test it in these neighborhoods, and now we're getting more yield. Like, it's those kind of things that I think are going to change the education concept. The second thing is that there's a huge push now toward online and virtual learning. But it's still a very traditional construct there. Is let's go take a class where I'm throwing information at you, where you watch some videos. In our case, one of the things we're working on is imagine a day where I can have a remote science class. I'm going to send you a sensor. You got to go outside, collect some data. You're going to submit something digital with that. We can have a digital lab experience. Why are we not doing that? And so I think that's, and to me, as we identify the right cloud partner, that I can take that to scale, now you can export this stuff to across the country, across the world, and have a common experience around it.
Yeah, and I can see, I mean, the having Amazon as a partner to be able to do that, and they're delivering this stuff within hours.
That's it.
The next day.
That's it.
Anyway, I mean, you're
that's
part
the opportunity.
of that whole environment.
So for us, and that's the point. So what I'm trying to do is show that we have done an amazing POC around ways to engage kids within tech that's aligned to teaching. And now that we've had this 5 or 6 year MVP that we've been cranking it out by ourselves, we're at a point now that with the appropriate partner who is, I was calling myself, who's a philanthropic capitalist, we're going to go and scale across the globe overnight because we are properly aligned and our synergies are right in line with that. That's what I'm chasing.
Wow, fascinating. Well, I'll tell you, we learned a lot today about how technology is being brought from schools into commercial apps. And what I like is, one, there's folks out there that are listening, and this might spark an interest in them to pursue. How can they get involved? How would they reach out to learn more about what you're doing? What are other resources in the community where young people and their parents and also business owners can start changing their business model to capitalize on some of the stuff that's out there?
Cool. Well, I'm pretty easy to find. So on social, Laron, L-A-R-O-N-A, Walker is where you'll find me. I'm more of a Twitter and LinkedIn type of guy, so you'll find me there. As it relates to the business, the website is Mantis, like the spider, M-A-N-T-I-S, E-D-U, as in education.co. C-O is our website, so go there. We're launching a new website very soon. A lot of interactive blog content there. And for the different people you mentioned, different constituents types, we have a lot of forums there to be involved with us. So if you wanted to be a part of one of our STEM camps or summer camps, let us know. If you're a company who wants to not only engage with kids, but your interest is, hey, can you help me pull together some content around this domain that aligns with what I'm doing so I can present around things that I care about? We're making it happen as well. So find us online, connect with us, and we'd love to partner.
Oh, fabulous. Well, I tell you, I love when we get to talk to different kind of business. I bet most people wouldn't realize that you can take a technology business and have impact on people in the community with a vision toward the future that's feeding the pipeline of industry. And I mean, the folks that are out there doing what you're doing, I think are setting the ground for a different generation. So when you hear Silicon Valley say they can't find people to fill all these tech jobs, I think helps on the way, and I'm glad that folks like you are help leading that.
Let me share the story.
Oh, my pleasure. I'd like to thank Atlanta Tech Park for hosting the Capitalist Sage podcast, and thank Laron for your time today, sharing some of the stuff you've done, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of some of the things you've done and you're working on to help in the community and help transform the way people look at business. Atlanta Tech Park is a great place to kind of nurture that further, find other like-minded individuals, take hardware and software and apply some business sense to it and find good applications and ways to do that is really important. I'm Karl Barham with Transworld Business Advisors. I get the pleasure of working and meeting with great entrepreneurs and business owners out there, helping them figure out their strategy to growth, and when they're ready, how to exit their business. So you can reach me at kbarham@tworld.com or visit www.tworld.com/Atlanta Peachtree. Reach out. And Rico, why don't you tell me a little bit about what we've got going on? I feel there's something coming in the near future for us to go take a look at soon.
There's so much out there. So you can find me, Rico Figliolini, on LinkedIn or MightyRockets.com. I do social media marketing, content marketing, and video, especially if you need product explainer videos. I do that. I'm also publisher, as you mentioned before, of Peachtree Corners magazine here in the city of Peachtree Corners, and also host of several podcasts, a family of podcasts, including this with Karl, who does the heavy lifting on this show. So he's done a great job here. I also do Prime Lunchtime with the city manager and Peachtree Corners Life. So we've done quite a few things coming up, and the magazine will be coming out. I think it's hitting the post office next Friday. We are doing technology in schools, so we've covered several of the schools in Peachtree Corners, let's call it, like Paul Duke STEM High School, Wesleyan, Cornerstone Christian, Picnicville Middle. So there's a few schools that are being covered and what they're doing in technology and how that helps them in their education process. So that's one of the stories. Of course, we're doing Pets and Their People, and we're doing a few other things, including the Voices of Football, covering some of the announcers from Norcross and Wesleyan. So that's kind of cool. So just a lot of stuff out there, and we just went through that grand opening with the Curiosity Lab.
A lot of fun. Got to ride in a car without a driver and live to tell about it. And so it's a lot of good things going on in the community. We really encourage people to get involved and go out and see what's happening in the community all around and participate, be an active participant, and see what differences you can make.
Yep,
so
for
good.
Sure.
Well, thank you, everybody. Stay tuned for our next episode of the Capitalist Sage podcast. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
This has been the Capitalist Sage with Karl Barham and Rico Figliolini, the twice-a-month podcast with entrepreneurs and business experts. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Want more? Visit our website at capitalistsagepodcast.com.